morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting Australian Indian Radio's daily Facebook Live update. Hey, we are going to be, rebranding a little bit of the segment. As we know, we are still in Indian Radio and Brisbane Indian Times together. So together we are the Chentex Multimedia Group. So, Chentex Multimedia, which includes the Facebook Live, we have the Brisbane Indian Times and Australian Indian Radio. So with all that, I'd like to welcome you once again to this weekend special on Saturday, the 29th of August 2020. Well, let's take a very quick look at what the weather's got for us today. So the forecast for the rest of Saturday is maximum of 23, partly cloudy, and a chance of rain is about 5% only. And the weather outlook for Brisbane area is partly cloudy, winds south to southeasterly 15 to 20 kilometers, tending easterly to southeasterly in the middle of the day, then becoming light in the evening. Fire danger, obviously without any rain, is very high, so always take precautions around fire. I know there have been questions about whether open fire pits should be allowed or should be discouraged. So if you are using one, always do so with a lot of care and precaution. Sun protection obviously is recommended from now till about 2:30 p.m. and the UV index will reach up to 6, which falls in the high category. Well, so that's that, and let's take a very quick look at the cases and the numbers of the cases. So Queensland, 1,113, and recovery is 1,084 with 6 deaths. Well, whole of Australia, 25,448 cases. Recovery is 20,628 with 583 deaths recorded. Worldwide, that figures crept up from, I remember reporting from 16, 17, 18. Today it stands at 24.5 million. Yes, 24.5 million cases worldwide. And the recovery is 16 million. And the deaths are 832. As we have seen the reports coming out of India about the numbers, that the numbers of cases are very high, but also if you look at the rate of recovery and control, the equivalent to that is on the rise there as well. So that is good news, but once again things need to be kept under control. Now moving on, Victoria braces for warm weekend so when that happens in Victoria, as we know that they're quite used to being indoors most of the years, but when there is a warm day, they all like to get out. So there would be a fear of crowds getting together. And Queensland, a cluster grows. It has grown a little bit, and top doctor warns against MP's claim. The IDF and Victoria Police will be patrolling beaches this weekend amid concerns that crowds will flock to enjoy the warm weather despite stage 4 restrictions. A Queensland Correctional Services cluster has grown with another prison guard testing positive to COVID-19. And Australia's Deputy Chief Medical Officer has rejected an MP's claim for a push for that hydroxychloroquine, saying the drug simply does not benefit coronavirus patients. And of course, the other things that we're going to look at today is new restrictions in place for Queenslanders this weekend, warm weather crackdown in Victoria, the Correctional Services cluster which has grown, and the drug hydroxychloroquine is not the answer, says Deputy Chief Medical Officer. But right now, let's go to some of the general news that's been taking place. As we know, that yesterday our Premier announced that no schoolies this year. Let's recap that story.
Coming into effect from 8 a.m. Saturday, we are going to extend those limits of people inside your homes to 10 people and those gatherings outside to 10 on the Gold Coast, and the same restrictions we put in place for aged care, for hospitals and disability service providers will also cover the Gold Coast as well. We have to take this cautionary approach. I think everyone would agree. We acted very swiftly when it came to those earlier cases with the Brisbane Youth Detention Centre, and we know that people travel a lot from the Gold Coast to Brisbane, so now it makes absolutely perfect sense to extend that. So Dr Young will go into further details about that. I also just want to address the issue of schoolies. Now, of course, we know we are in a different time at the moment, and of course the world's going through a global pandemic and things aren't as they would normally be. And can I first of all commend all of our teachers out there, the students, and the fact that we actually have people attending our schools in Queensland. There has not been those huge disruptions to classroom education that we have seen in Victoria and we have seen in other parts of the world. And of course, I think there are even comments being made about in Europe at the moment, there are concerns about schools going back with large outbreaks of coronavirus in countries such as France overnight. So what I want to say to everyone is I want to thank everyone for the way in which our schools have been open and the way in that the whole education system has responded. So we've had to look at this issue very seriously and from a cross-agency perspective, but fundamentally, as Queenslanders know, we always listen to the health advice, and the Chief Health Officer has deemed the event of schoolies, it is a mass event over multiple days, is high risk. So the schoolies that we have come to know over the years will not be able to go ahead in that form this year.
And of course, we know that it is not going to go ahead in that capacity. But of course, as the Premier said yesterday, that families are allowed to go out, book accommodation, and stay in other outside areas as long as all the rules and regulations and the restrictions are observed and followed. So that would really make sense. Now, as we know, there have been cases that have been reported from New South Wales as well. So let's take a look at the numbers in New South Wales.
Of the 13 new cases to 8 p.m. last night, one is in a returned traveller who is in hotel quarantine. 6 cases are linked to the Sydney CBD cluster. 4 are locally acquired with their source still under investigation, and 2 are close contacts of previously reported cases who have not been linked to known clusters. One of the new cases is a student of the St Gertrude's Catholic Primary School in Smithfield. Additionally, a staff member from the Ryde Secondary College was confirmed to have COVID late last night. This case is not included in our numbers because it came in after 8 p.m. cut-off, but will be included in tomorrow's numbers. But both St Gertrude's Catholic Primary School and the Ryde Secondary College are closed today for on-site learning and are being cleaned. All staff and students of both schools have been asked to self-isolate while close contacts are identified and contacted. There are 2 new cases, household contacts of previously reported cases who have not been linked to a known cluster, and they attend the Wingham College at Quakers Hill and the Schofields Public School. These schools and the Riverstone High School have been cleaned and are reopening today. Close contacts are in self-isolation. Further investigations have found that anyone who attended the Sydney Tattersalls Club on Monday the 24th of August from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. is now deemed a close contact and must get tested immediately and isolate for 14 days and remain in isolation even if that test comes back as negative.
So even if the tests come to have negative, they will still be required to be tested if you have been in those above disclosed locations. Now, breaking news and of the news following up after what happened last week and the case that was held in Christchurch about that matter. Now, the Deputy Prime Minister of New Zealand is saying that, New Zealand should not bear the whole cost of the justice and of course of keeping in custody the perpetrator. So let's hear from him, and we'll then look at the debate from Australian side, and we'll look at the reply from our Minister Peter Dutton. So first of all, let's go to New Zealand.
This was a matter coming up before our courts for sentence, and until the judge gave his verdict, it was inappropriate for anybody to make any comment prior to that. This is always a view I held from the word go, depending on how the trial would end up. And I still think it's the right and fair thing to do. Well, he came from Australia, and the cost to New Zealand is massive. An act of mass terrorism of 51 people being murdered, 40 attempted murders, and it would have been worse than that. Then there's all the ancillary associated necessary costs to look after those families, sometimes for the rest of their lives. This is huge, and to suggest we should have a cost structure going forward for a 29-year-old who could live another 50 years or longer, in real terms, potentially $50 million or more, is surely unreasonable. Well, these are just sort of temporary complications. We could fix this up by acts of parliament, by making legislative changes, and by agreement with Australia. In between our two countries, long-standing ANZUS partners for hundreds of years plus, this is not a complication in the way that some politicians are putting it up. All I'm saying is this is unprecedented, and the cost is huge. At that level of security inside our prisons, surely that would be the right thing for the Australian people to accept. Well, the arrangements are massive already to ensure that, in terms of our obligations under our penal system, that someone, despite them being in prison for punishment or rehabilitation, nevertheless is safe, is going to accelerate and inflate the cost massively. So the cost in our country might be $105,000 for certain prisoners per annum. This would be much, much, much higher than that. And as I say, in real terms, looking forward, down the track 50 years, possibly way more than $50 million. And given all the other costs, this is a part and parcel of the reasonable, logical process we should be discussing with Australia. Now, I'm just giving the view of a party that I lead called New Zealand First.
You're the Deputy Prime Minister. I mean, your words do carry weight.
Yes, but I didn't put it out under my Deputy Prime Minister's role. I put it out as the leader of a political party that believes the fair, logical and reasonable thing to do in all the circumstances. And given the fact that the Australians have sent so many people back to our country when they have said that this person has caused an offence or a crime in Australia, even though some of them arrived when they were 4, 5 or 6 years of age, it seems to me from the point of view of fairness, balance and straight out reasonableness that this would be the right thing to do. And when it is said, by way of counter-argument, hang on a minute, these people come back to New Zealand or are sent back to New Zealand after they've spent their time in prison, my response to that is, yes, but your man is coming back in a body bag. How can that be in any way a reasonable comparison? The truth is that they, in the main, have forgiven this guy, despite what he has done, and want to get on with their lives. They want closure. And in the big picture, I think many of them also believe that it'd be better if he went back to his country of origin, and therefore we could expunge him from our memory.
And take him away from the memory. That might be the case, but will that happen? Well, here's a response from Minister Peter Dutton.
We've been very clear that Australian citizens that commit crimes overseas, ultimately, when they're deported back to our country, we accept them. But we haven't had a formal request from New Zealand as yet, and we'll wait to have that discussion with them in private. But I hope that this individual serves the longest possible sentence that's been imposed in New Zealand. We'd have to look at what happens in terms of parole or the way in which our legal system would work here. So first priority to keep him in jail for the rest of his life, and we'll work very closely with New Zealand on any requests that they provide.
Yeah. And there will be the request, and as the Deputy PM of New Zealand said, that the comments that he was making was as a leader of a party and not as a Deputy PM. So obviously there have not been any official request, as Minister Dutton has already said. So, I mean, negotiations are taking place and that will happen. But, there were lots of speeches in that courthouse and some were very, very emotional. The one that really caught my eye was this one. But excuse me if it doesn't play. I'll try and give it a go and see if it plays.
Name is Sarah Carson.
Yeah, he does.
Daughter of a hero. Daughter of a shining, glimmering man. Daughter of a light in our lives we called Abdul. Daughter of the essence of joy and laughter and human connection. Daughter of a martyr, Abdel Fattah Qasim. Remember that name. On March 15th in 2019, life as I knew it as a 23-year-old, just beginning my career in teaching, changed forever. I lost my dear father, Abdel Fattah Qasim, in the An-Nur mosque shooting at the hands of a heinous terrorist. My father, the apple of our eyes, Abdel Fattah Qasim. Hear the name. I wonder if he was in pain, if he was frightened, and what his final thoughts were. And I wish more than anything in the world that I could have been there to hold his hand and tell him that it would all be okay. But I couldn't do that. I never would have ever imagined that the country in which my parents immigrated to for safety and for a successful future for their children would result in this. This didn't have to happen. All a daughter ever wants is her dad. I want to go on more road trips with him. I want to smell his garden source cooking. His cologne. Let it be known, these tears are not for you, just to clarify. The way he walked down the hallway with purpose and a spring in his step, his deep belly laugh. I want to hear him tell me more about the olive trees in Palestine. I want to hear his voice. I want to hear my dad's voice, my Baba's voice. I am uncertain there will ever be enough justice for what has happened at the hands of a terrorist. That's you. However, I know one thing for sure, that this monster who murdered my father and the other beautiful souls that day in March is a coward. That would be a familiar term to you. Those that fight with guns, cowards. You know you're not strong. You know you're weak. Look at yourself. In the end, love wins and love will always win. You paved a path you hoped would end in loneliness and in fear and division. Though instead, it's woven us a thread that is far more integral in the fabric of the New Zealand society than ever before. Ever before. You had no right. Pity you, your coarse and tainted heart, and your narrow view of the world. You would have to be so utterly miserable to be so close-minded and yet live in such a beautifully diverse world. I urge you to take a look around this courtroom and ask yourself, who exactly is the other here right now? Is it us? Or is it you? I think the answer's pretty clear.
That clip there is the courtesy of SBS News, and I must say that a very, very powerful speech there, and very emotional as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, moving on, so we'll go to today's interview, and as we know that there's a lot that's been happening out there in the world, and we're looking at a lot of antiviral nasal sprays. Well, there's a link that these antiviral nasal sprays could lead to the fight against COVID-19. A Melbourne biotech is developing an antiviral nasal spray to fight against COVID-19. The nasal spray would provide a much-needed bridging solution prior to a vaccine and would be used alongside the vaccine, offering a hope of horizon for Australia and the world. The spray would be available to healthcare workers as little as in 12 months, providing them with additional protection beyond the PPE and social distancing. So Australian biotech company StraPharma has joined the fight against COVID-19 by developing an antiviral nasal spray which kills COVID-19 upon contact. Sounds good. The spray utilizes antiviral ingredients SPL7013 as a preventive for coronavirus, while a vaccine is being developed to be used alongside a vaccine to increase that production. So that's the news there, and to talk to us on that vaccine and the not the vaccine but the nasal spray, we have Dr. Jackie Farley, who is the CEO of StraPharma. And Jackie Farley has more than 30 years of operational experience in pharmaceutical and biotech industry, working in business development and senior management roles with companies including CSL and founding Hospira, which is now part of Pfizer. She was appointed the CEO of StraPharma Holdings Limited in 2006, and she holds a first-class honours degree in science, which is pharmacology and pathology and veterinary science from the University of Melbourne. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is wonderful that she could join us, and unfortunately we couldn't get her in the studio via video link, but she is joining us via phone. So, ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to welcome Dr. Jackie Farley, and as I've said before, that she has held so many different positions. So while at CSL, she obtained an MBA from Melbourne Business School, where she was the recipient of the prestigious Clemenger Medal. And so when we look at all the things that has been done, there's a lot that has been achieved. But ladies and gentlemen, with that, let's welcome to the studio the CEO of StraPharma, Dr. Jackie Farley.
Hello, nice to be with you.
Thank you so much for that, Jackie, and I'm glad that we've been able to connect now. Okay, could you tell us a little bit more about the antiviral nasal spray and what it would be like and what it can do?
We all know that coronaviruses infect us via our nose and mouth, and so the nasal passage is a very important route of infection, and this spray is a topical spray, just like you use any other kind of nasal spray, which sits on the nasal mucosa and protects you against the infection from the coronavirus.
Okay, so that is wonderful news that it will be, there for protecting us from coronavirus. So what is the antiviral ingredient, and can this be used as well as a vaccine?
So the active ingredient is called SPL7013, and it's a novel spherical polymer called a dendrimer, which was developed in Melbourne, in fact, and invented in Melbourne and developed by StraPharma. It's a man-made molecule which blocks the interaction between the coronavirus and a number of other kinds of viruses and the human cells that they typically bind to at the very beginning of infection. You often hear about the spikes on a coronavirus, and the way that this molecule works is to actually block these spikes interacting with human cells, which would otherwise cause infection. So it basically blocks infection through blocking those spikes.
Oh, that is wonderful news, Anne. Now, as we know that there are a lot of frontline workers, so how will it affect, or will this help the frontline workers?
So the spray can help frontline workers through being an additional preventative means that they would use to prevent infection. So we're all aware that healthcare workers wear masks and they wear gloves and they wear visors and things like that to try and avoid exposure to the coronavirus. This is just another level of protection. And the important thing is that this can be sprayed into the nose. It can be used as well as masks, and it can also be used as well as vaccines. So it can be used while we wait for a vaccine, but it can also be used as well as a vaccine to just provide additional protection and to further reduce the risk of infection by coronavirus.
That sounds wonderful. So when might we expect to see that, this nasal spray? When would it probably be available in the market?
This product has the benefit that the active ingredient is already marketed in a number of products developed by Star Pharma. And so we are expecting to get expedited regulatory approval for this product. And so we're hoping that we will have it available for sale in as little as 6 to 12 months.
So that is wonderful news that between 6 to 12 months, I think Star Pharma has done a wonderful job there, Jackie, and it is wonderful that, this is happening. So I know that there will be people and there will be lots of questions that might be arising from people and our listeners. So, where can people go to get a little bit more information on this?
Additional information on Star Pharma can be found at our website, www.starpharma.com. And also as a listed company, you can find us under the code SPL.
So under the code SPL, well, Jackie, once again, thank you so much for joining us on the show and sharing that wonderful information. I hope this goes well because this is good news, that this will work in conjunction with the vaccine. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, ladies and gentlemen, that was Dr. Jackie Fairley from Star Pharma, and it sounds very promising that, we'll have this antiviral nasal spray which will work in conjunction with the vaccine when that comes out into the market there as well. Well, ladies and gentlemen, right now it's time for a quick commercial break.
ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी 1989 से लेकर अब तक का विश्वसनीय और माननीय ब्रिस्बेन का रियल एस्टेट एजेंट है। उषा चंद्रा, जो कि ग्लोबनेट की डायरेक्टर है, अपने ग्राहकों को ईमानदार और एथिक सर्विसेज देती हैं। अगर आप ब्रिस्बेन की प्रॉपर्टी में पूंजी लगाना चाहते हैं और आप चाहते हैं कि आपकी प्रॉपर्टी को प्रोफेशनली मैनेज किया जाए, तो आप आज ही कांटेक्ट कीजिए उषा चंद्रा को। लैंडलाइन नंबर है 38654466 और मोबाइल नंबर है 0419775416। और आप प्रॉपर्टी की अधिक जानकारी और करंट अपडेट्स के लिए हमारी वेबसाइट पे लॉगिन कर सकते हैं। हमारी वेबसाइट है www.globenetreality.com.au। ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी आपका अपना लोकल रियल एस्टेट एजेंट है। हमारा पता है ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी, शॉप नंबर 5, 2281 सैंडगेट रोड, बुंदल, क्वींसलैंड। ग्लोबनेट रियलिटी, रियल एस्टेट इज अवर वर्ल्ड।
And real estate is their world. Well, right now, looking at the world, it's time now that when we look at all the overseas news. So let's very quickly look at that convention happening in America. Yes, the Donald Trump's rally, and here's how it happened in his final speech.
From Yorktown to Gettysburg, from Normandy to Iwo Jima, American patriots raced into cannon blasts, bullets, and bayonets to rescue American liberty. They had no fear, but America didn't stop there. We looked into the sky and kept pressing onward. We built a 6 million pound rocket and launched it thousands of miles into space. We did it so that two brave patriots could stand tall and salute our wondrous American flag planted on the face of the moon. For America, nothing is impossible. Over the next 4 years, we will prove worthy of this magnificent legacy. We will reach stunning new heights, and we will show that the world, for America, there is a dream, and it is not beyond your reach. Together we are unstoppable. Together we are unbeatable, because together we are the proud citizens of the United States of America.
So, ladies and gentlemen, President Trump. Well, right now, time for news brief, and let's take a look at the headlines.
Top stories on ABC News. Victorian officials are confident daily COVID-19 case numbers in the state will fall below 100 by next week if people continue to follow public health advice. There have been 113 new infections and 12 more deaths, all linked to aged care. Victoria has more than 3,000 active cases, 187 of those are in regional areas. Students at 2 Sydney schools were sent home early today after positive cases of coronavirus. A staff member at Double Bay Public School in Sydney's East is confirmed to have the virus, as well as an employee at the Cubby House Childcare in Homebush. Both schools will undergo a deep clean. Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has announced he's stepping down from his job over health concerns. Mr. Abe says his condition began declining in the middle of last month. He's Japan's longest-serving Prime Minister after previously resigning in 2007. And Donald Trump has used his key address to the Republican convention to attack Democratic rival Joe Biden. The president also lauded his administration's response to the coronavirus pandemic, despite the country having the highest death toll in the world.
So that's news in brief, and as we've heard that the Prime Minister of Japan is planning to step down. Let's hear from him now.
病気と治療を抱え、体力が万全でないという苦痛の中、大切な政治判断を誤ること、結果を出さないことがあってはなりません。国民の皆様の負託に自信を持って応えられる状態で亡くなった以上、総理大臣の地位にあり続けるべきではないと判断いたしました。総理大臣の職を辞することといたします。
And so there you go. Health comes first, as he mentions that he will be, stepping down amid all that problems that he had with his health. And right now, let's go to, let's look at what's happening down south as we join Premier Peter Gutwein, as he says the number of brides contacted him about dancing at weddings. So, what's happening there and how does he tackle that question?
Dancing is obviously an issue that is raised regularly. And I do want to, at this point, say that in terms of the concerns that public health have, I share those concerns. Nightclubs have been around the world have been designated and have been high-risk areas, and it is something that we need to manage very, very carefully. And I know that there are many people, both young and old, that have raised concerns about this particular issue, but I do want to just ensure that people understand that the reason that dancing in nightclubs is not allowed is because they are seen as a very high-risk area and location and activity in the midst of a pandemic. However, the other matter, or one matter that has been raised regularly in terms of dancing, has been in terms of weddings. And I'm pleased to announce today that we're able to provide a relaxation on the restrictions as they apply to weddings and the bridal party. The couple getting married, along with parents, guardians, members of the bridal party, will be able to have that dance, which for many people is so very, very important. I know the number of brides that have contacted me. It'd be fair to say I haven't had that many grooms contact me in terms of this particular activity, but the number of brides have, and you know, I think it's a very good step forward.
So there you go. The brides have come forward and asked him, while the grooms have kept abreast. They're keeping away. Well, right now let's go to Victoria and hear from the Premier Daniel Andrews, as he says that he will not rush into lifting those lockdowns.
Absolutely, we'll provide as much notice as we possibly can. But I want to be very frank with people. The notion that we would go from, say, stage 4 to stage 2 or stage 1, where all of those businesses would be open like a normal kind of second half of the year, normal spring, we're not going to be able to do that. It's going to have to be gradual and steady because we've all got to be really careful to make sure that nothing we do makes it more likely that we find ourselves back here in exactly this place. We want to defeat this second wave and defeat it properly, and then that means that we can avoid a third wave, or at least it's much more likely that we can then find that COVID normal and have a longer term plan that gets us well into 2021. Hopefully a vaccine comes at some point during next year, and then things are in a very different place. But it will be, no rule will be on longer than it needs to be, and no stage will be longer than it needs to be to protect public health, to save lives, but also to save livelihoods as well. And we'll have many announcements that we will make in the weeks and months ahead around economic recovery, the government playing its part to stimulate demand and confidence, all of that work, and to stand beside every single person who has been terribly injured by this. This is a very, very challenging set of circumstances. We've never faced anything like this before. And it won't be quick. It will take a lot of time for us to repair that damage and to support people, and we will be there with them.
So can you offer them a glimmer of hope that there will be some form of change for them after September the 13th, given the figures at the moment?
What I hope to be able to do is well before then, and what I'm very confident we'll be able to do is well before then, we will be able to map out, and there'll be asterisks on it. It'll all be subject to case numbers and data and science, and I think people want us to be guided by that. But well before then, certainly before then, we will be able to give people a sense of what the weeks and months to come look like. Some of it will be broad, some of it might be quite detailed, but it would all be based on how much virus is there, are the numbers low enough. I'll just go back to my point before. If you were to reopen on Monday, say, at 113, 100 cases, then they wouldn't be at 100 for very, very long. We would finish up pretty quickly back where we were 3, 4, 5 weeks ago. That would be of no benefit to anybody. 3 people have tragically lost their lives in those storms overnight. A 4-year-old boy died after being struck by a tree in Blackburn South. He was taken to hospital with critical injuries, but sadly he died later last evening. A 59-year-old Tacoma man died after a tree fell on his car. Now, investigators have been told that a car was leaving a shopping centre car park when a tree fell and crushed the vehicle just after 6 p.m. last night, but those investigations obviously will be ongoing. Thirdly, a 36-year-old Parkdale woman has died after a tree fell on a vehicle in Fernshaw. It's believed the vehicle was travelling along the Maroondah Highway when it was hit by a falling tree at about 10 to 7 last night. The driver, she was a passenger, the driver is a 24-year-old Flinders man who was taken to hospital with, we believe, unbriefed minor injuries. There have been about 2,000 calls for assistance since those strong winds began. 1,600 jobs or tasks have been completed and the SES are working on the remaining calls as quickly as they possibly can. The majority of those calls, some 85%, are about felled trees and about 10% relates to building damage. Mount Evelyn, Belgrave and Croydon have been the most affected suburbs. Now, I can confirm that there's about 56,000 households that have been affected by unplanned power outages. The majority of those are across the central region. It's expected that power will be restored, I'm told, by about midday, but there may be others where that doesn't occur until later on today. It may take longer. The final point I wanted to make in relation to the storms, this has been well publicised, but it's important just to remind people again, the Sylvan Dam water treatment plant did lose power last night. That power has been restored since, but it's very important that, and this is the advice of Yarra Valley Water.
So, ladies and gentlemen, there you go, the updates there from Premier Daniel Andrews. Well, last news before we go to the upcoming events and what's taking place under the current circumstances is the news coming out of New South Wales. Well, police say that this man hid in a wall cavity to evade the police officers, and he's been charged with an ongoing sexual abuse offences.
In mid-July, the victim is alleging that she was taken to an address where she was with a male that she knows. This individual has allegedly detained her against her will at this location for a 3-week period. That detention included physical violence, threats of violence, as well as fortification on the premises that prevented her from leaving. On the 14th of August, the victim managed to escape that premises, where she alerted authorities and an investigation commenced. Excuse me. Police have attended that address in mid-August, where they conducted a crime scene warrant. The male person was not at that location. Further inquiries led us back to attend yesterday, where the male was found hidden in an area that can be described as within the confines of a wall that had been made into similar to a closet. In that location was various items that are relevant to this offence, including USBs. There was a safe, a number of weapons that we believe were used to facilitate this offence.
So there you go, that's where he hid himself. Well, right now it's time to go to all our upcoming events, or the ones that are taking place. Now don't forget that some of the events are taking place virtually, meaning they are online events. Do take part in the online events as well. Do take part into the seminars that or webinars that have been arranged, because they are all very, very informative, and of course they will all provide you with good knowledge and good, especially the ones from mental health and the other ones. As we know, there's a lot of talk going on right at this time about the Vilification Act and the groups working together. There's many communities working behind it. So there's quite a lot of things that are happening virtually. There's so many Zoom meetings that people are attending. But if you can, and if you are able to join in, please join in into those ones. And if you're going to any function or event, make sure that you check with the organizers before you head off there as to how many people are allowed. And at the moment, my belief is here in Queensland is the numbers are limited to 10. So, before you head off to anything, please make sure you double check with the organizers. So here is the list. May I take this opportunity to also let everyone know that the next issue of Brisbane Indian Times is in finalization. So if you have any editorials that you need to send, and of course if you have any ads, please contact Dr. Charita Deshpande, and she will accommodate you. And for your editorials, please contact Dilraj Dillon, and she will accommodate those in. As we know, even through all these times, through the pandemic, we have always maintained our print and online version. So, I know that there are many people who always like the touch and feel of a physical paper. So we have maintained our standards, and we've kept putting out copies every month. Obviously, under these current circumstances, the number of print ones have been reduced to a certain degree, because a lot of outlets where people used to come and pick up the newspaper are closed at the moment. So it doesn't make sense to have papers just lying there. So we had to re-gauge the movement and the distribution, and we have adjusted accordingly. So ladies and gentlemen, once again, it's been wonderful having you and your company on this show. Remember, it has been a Chentex multimedia presentation. Chentex is the company, parent company of Brisbane Indian Times and Australian Indian Radio, and we are proud to bring you this daily updates, and on a Saturday, the weekend special. Until Monday, it's goodbye from me. Have the wonderful weekend, whatever's left of it. Where if I look outside, if you can see behind my window, it's wonderful. It's a beautiful night out there. But if you're heading off anywhere, please observe those rules. Be good, but above all, remain safe.